don't really care if people are religious. I'm not really, I think actually religion does a lot of good at the community, individual church level. It's when
That's so interesting.
You get into multiple and they start organizing together, and that when they become political or militaristic, that's when I get upset.
100% of the proceeds gained from this monetized episode will be donated to sciencesaves.org. Thanks for listening. Todd Stiefel, thank you so much for joining me today on Growing Up Fundie, my podcast. I really appreciate you donating your time, and both here today and via email as we've been exchanging. I really appreciate it. And other than that, I would love to give you a chance to kind of introduce yourself, who you are and what you do, and just tell us some interesting facts.
All right. My name is Todd Stiefel. I'm just a dude. Yes, I'm a bad retiree. I've been retired for 13 years, but I'm bad at it. I always find ways to create lots of projects for myself and stay involved and active and have some fun and do some good in the world. So yeah, born in New York, raised in Miami, live in Raleigh, North Carolina. There you go. There's my bio.
There you go. I feel like the best way to call yourself a bad retiree is to retire and then donate tons of money to foundations for good things. And I mean, I don't want to spoil it for people because I know we're going to talk about it later, but if everybody who retired could donate as much money as you have to active causes, I think that's a good retirement. I don't know. Maybe that's just me.
I think a lot of people donate within their means, and I'm lucky enough to have means to donate more. So it gets more attention, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's fair or, just it is what it is. You have more, you can donate more.
Yeah. So for a little bit of background, I've recognized that a lot of your work is anti-religion in the government, Christianity specifically, making laws and rules and things like that. So it kind of leads me to believe that maybe you've had some negative experiences personally in the past. I was just curious what your background is with religion, if you were raised with any at all in the past, or what does that look like?
I do want to just say I don't consider myself anti-religious, and I don't consider my work anti-religious, although the other side loves to frame it that way. I more trying to gain equality, especially social equality for secular people, and trying to improve the separation of church and state so that we have religious freedom for everybody rather than just a select few. So
I like that distinction. Thank you for making that distinction.
Yeah, it's all good. I mean, maybe a little bit in my early days was, well, and how about this? Even then, it's not necessarily anti-religious, it's anti-religious fundamentalism.
Yes.
Fundamentalism. There you go. I screwed up fundamentalism on oh my gosh, what am I doing? I'm fired. Bye.
That's why I just say Fundie, because I don't end up stumbling under my words. I just say Fundie.
So I am anti-religious fundamentalism for sure. I don't really care if people are religious. I'm not really, I think actually religion does a lot of good at the community, individual church level. It's when you get into multiple and they start organizing together, and that when they become political or militaristic, that's when I get upset. So it's like,
that's so interesting. I would not have expected you to say that.
It's like Islam versus Islamism. It's like Islam is fine, Islamism is not, and it's same with Christianity or Christianism. I don't know. Christianism, but there's clearly a difference. Most Christians are fine, cool, great people, whatever. It's when they start seeking political power and trying to impart their will on us or want to do a crusade.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I have beef. But
we had a crusade before, didn't work out great. Don't need another one.
No, it was a problem.
Now, maybe I'm incorrect in this observation as well. I want to make sure that you correct me. I have noticed that a lot of the focus is very specifically Christianity as opposed to Islam or Judaism. Is that because of the hold they have politically and how maybe that impacts you more than the rest do? Or is it specifically because of something that you take against Christianity? I'm curious about that. Because
I was born in America, and therefore America is still majority Christian, not for long.
No, it's declining.
If I was born in Iran, I would probably be doing this, trying to stop Islamic laws, although I'd probably be out of the country for safety reasons. But yeah, it's because fundamentalist Christianity dominates one of our political parties right now and essentially has veto power over whatever they do. And there are a number of people trying to install biblical law in this country, which I find terrifying.
Yes, absolutely. And I do think that is another very important distinction, especially for people who may not be as familiar with Christianity, is there is a big difference between Christians and fundamentalist Christians, and there is a big difference between Christians and evangelical Christians. One of the main criticisms I've ever gotten about this podcast is that it makes Christians look bad, and that's not at all the case. The focus is on fundamentalist Christianity and evangelical Christianity and the impact that that has. And like you said, the vice grip that that has on the country and laws and people and generations. So that's also a great distinction I'm glad you made.
And even that, I don't even have a beef with a lot of evangelicals. It's the evangelical, because evangelical is really more about just trying to spread and get people to come into the faith and stuff like that. Fine, say your piece, try to recruit. I don't care. But it's the fact that the evangelicals have become much more political than other groups, and are starting to cause infringements on our rights.
Right.
There's my problem. Or trying to create special privileges in the law for themselves, special religious exemptions that nobody else gets.
Right, exactly. I tell people, I try to give them this example all the time. I'm like, when I was my most Christian, when I was Christian and I was younger, maybe my early 20s, I may not have liked something, but I never once considered passing legislation so that nobody else could partake in that activity. I just didn't do it. I just stayed away from it. And so I think there is a huge difference between, I don't like the way you're living your life versus I don't like the way you're living your life because of what my doctrine says. Therefore, I'm going to make it impossible for you to live your life that way, even though you have nothing to do with my beliefs and my lifestyle.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Some of the things I hear, none of their business and none of the government's business.
Right.
It's ironic because a lot of times these are the same people who are like, oh, small government. It's really important. We need to keep the government small. Oh, but and we shouldn't have restrictions. We need as much freedom as possible. Oh, except abortion. We really need to be all over you and really controlling you in detail and putting regulations, on abortion clinics because they're hypocrites, frankly. So, at the end of the day, here we are.
Yeah, those are the same people that were like vetoing against like helping New Orleans and helping Florida. And then the minute that their state gets hit, like Kentucky and Tennessee, they're suddenly like, where's all our money, please? Didn't you try to pass a law to not give states money in times of crisis? Didn't you do that? Was that you? But so were you raised within any religion or any church?
Oh, yeah, that fun stuff. I was raised Catholic. Kind of liberal Catholic, but I was a believer. I wore a cross on my necklace until I was in college at some point. And I was always a skeptic and I asked a lot of questions and I didn't always get good answers to those questions. But most Catholic denominations are really more about the community and more about, education and the like. So I went to a all boys Catholic high school. And it gave me a fantastic education. In hindsight, really, my only main beef with it would have been they should have let girls in too. Patriarchy, it kind of goes to the territory. But Catholics accept science. They embrace science. They embrace evolution. And when I was being taught religion, we had required religion classes in the school. We didn't cover most of the crazy stuff. We mostly covered the love your neighbor, good moral stuff. We kind of skipped the genocides.
The entire book of Revelation.
Slavery's completely okay. As long as they're other people, you can't enslave your own nation, just other nations. So yeah, it was pretty toned down. So I didn't really have any bad experiences in my religious life. It was really more that there was always these lingering doubts because it didn't fully make sense. And eventually I got to college and took a class in Old Testament history, and it was like, oh, now it makes sense.
Yeah.
That was
Did you go to a Christian college?
I went to Duke University, which
Okay.
used to be affiliated with the Methodists. Now I guess it's kind of non-denominational, but the chapel dominates campus and it's gorgeous. Love it. I love stained glass. I'm a nerd.
It's beautiful.
I'm a nerd for
beautiful.
churches.
Yeah.
I really like churches, the buildings, that is. And I like the community. I like the community. I mean, it's cool.
Yeah.
So, but they have an excellent divinity school attached to the chapel. And I took a Old Testament class from an Orthodox Jewish professor, and he taught us all about the history of the Bible. And it was like, wait a minute, all these stories are just kind of descendants of other stories. Like, wait a minute, is it my beliefs are just the same mythology that other people were believing. Like,
yeah. It's like the game of telephone, except they tell you you're going to hell if you get the answer wrong.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So my beliefs just kind of collapsed. And at that point, I considered myself agnostic for years until coming across the new atheists and some of the writings in the mid 2000s. I guess, whatever you want to call them.
Do you remember what like the first thing was, or maybe the last thing was that you heard that made you be like, yeah, this is solidifying the fact that I don't identify as a Christian?
I think there was a couple things in that class. I think one was that, the angels in the Bible are really just other deities that have been kind of co-opted and turned into angels. I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
There are other gods like Baal in the Bible. I was like, wait a minute. They never taught me. They always said there's only one God. No, the Bible says there's more than one God. And God gets really pissed off if you follow the other gods. I was like, wait a minute. This is polytheism.
Wait a second.
Slowly turned into monotheism in the course of the Bible. And so it was like, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense. And it was also just learning about the earlier myths and how there were flood myths well before the Bible. Like Noah's Ark is not the first flood story. It's not. And some of the extreme similarities, like down to some of the word choice, is almost identical to earlier text at points. And it's like, wait a minute. Why don't I believe those earlier religions? I mean, if anything, I should follow them. I'm like, no. It doesn't make sense, because not only are you believing one religious claim compared to thousands of others, maybe tens of thousands in human history, but you're also believing one religion from one specific point in time. It's like, I'm going to believe the Noah's Ark version of the flood story because that's the one I want to believe, not the prior three versions, because that's all bullshit.
Right.
I love to swear here.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Hey. No, I've noticed that, like, I feel like there are versions of the Bible, and the one that's considered like the current correct modern way to believe that you get to heaven is also the one where like everybody in the Bible is Caucasian. And I'm like, that's not even historically accurate.
Oh yeah. I grew my hair out during COVID. As a matter of fact, I shaved it bald right at the beginning. It was like
just to see what
it was kind of like a statement. It's like, okay, quarantine begins. Let's see how long that goes.
Me too. I did too.
There you go. So boom, gone. And then I haven't cut it since. So this is the measure of the plague in America. And but now I'm starting to get people like, oh, you're starting to look like Jesus. I was like, no, I don't look like Jesus. First of all, I'm way too white. He was clearly, obviously Middle Eastern.
Right.
And Jesus is way buffer than me. I mean, like, have you ever seen an ugly Jesus? Jesus is hot. That dude is good looking. I mean, he is a blonde hair, blue eyes, Scandinavian marvel. He looks more like Thor.
I was about to say that. He looks like Thor. That's funny. Yeah. And that's like the first, I feel like, tip off that people should be like, somebody's lying. Somebody in one of these chapters is lying, because Noah was not, if he existed ever, was not a white man. Like Jesus was not a white man. Like I heard somebody say once that if you met the real Jesus, like that the people who claim to be evangelical Christians, if they met the real Jesus, they wouldn't want him on their plane. Because and I'm like, the true though, he would have looked like the guy that all the evangelicals were like, I'm not sitting next to him. Somebody needs to pull him aside and check his luggage. It's terrible.
Oh yeah.
But
especially like September 10th, 2001, people would have freaked out. Oh my gosh, look at that guy in the plane.
Yep. And it's also wild to me, very much like you said, where once you step back from religion, especially Christianity, once you step back and you start analyzing religion as a historical project, as opposed to a religious project, one, it's interesting, it's fascinating. Two, you start to find out so many of these stories, you're like, wait a second, the ancient people made these up and you just changed some of the details. Like, wait a second, hold on. Like Beowulf would have been written at the same time as some of these stories that you claim were invented by like these high-powered Christians of their time. But then also, as you mentioned, a lot of the stories, the details just don't line up. They don't make sense. It's like those series where the author dies and somebody else finishes the series. And you're like, this book was clearly written by a bunch of people who didn't communicate about the subject matter. That's the Bible. I feel like every chapter is like a different episode of a series that doesn't belong there.
Well, I think too, Christians, I think most of them don't know because they're not told. I didn't know this stuff until like later on. It's like, was it the Council of Nicaea? They freaking voted on which books were God's word and which ones needed to be burned. Like, it was literally a vote. It's like a bunch of dudes are like, yeah, burn that one. That's all BS. And they're like, yeah, that one's definitely the word of God. It's perfect in every way. Like, come on. Like,
yeah. They're like, I like chapter 13 because it says women should be able to preach. And the rest are like, nope, burn it.
Oh, that's
Throw
out.
it in the fire.
That's out. No way.
I love chapter 11. It's about free love. It's like, nope, burn it. Burn it.
No, that would challenge our power structures. Yeah,
that might get these ladies talking in church. We can't have that. But that's so you went to basically a religious university without being like a what's that called when you go to church to be a pastor? I'm just blanking on the word.
Community school or
there's like a
pastor
word.
camp.
Yeah, something pastor camp. Yeah, there's a word for it, and I know the minute we hang up, I'm going to be like, oh, there it is. I know a lot of people who went to those schools, but in those classes, by learning more about religion or learning more about the Bible, it basically had the opposite effect on you, and you realized you didn't believe it.
Yeah. Well,
interesting.
And for the first time, I was like, oh, wait, these are just myths. Because you're never told, like, these are myths, but they're your myths. Like, nobody's going to tell you that. But that's the facts. It's you. Everyone around the world who's religious believes in a specific set of myths from a specific set in time and believes them as infallible, the word of God. And it's all bullshit.
Now, do you believe, I've asked a couple of people this, I'm curious about your opinion. Do you believe that belief in religion is actually belief? Or do you think it's like peer pressure or fear? Like, do you think anybody actually believes the Bible because they choose to? Or do you think most people believe it because they're supposed to? And if they don't, like, the consequences are not great.
I believe the children are the future.
I believe I can fly.
So I think they really believe it.
Okay.
Yeah, I really believed. I mean, I had some doubts, but I had doubts more of, but I wasn't taught that the Bible was literally true. So, I mean, I was taught the Noah's Ark story, but it was more, it's a fantasy.
Like metaphorical.
Right. It was even interesting at the time because, like, well, this part's a metaphor, but this part's real.
Right. And then how do you determine? Yeah. God,
Jesus definitely died on the cross. I mean, don't question that. That's silly. But the part about women talking, no. That's just, that's old. We don't follow that anymore.
Yes. One thing that makes me insane. I grew up Baptist. One thing that makes me insane about Baptists I'm just going to say as a general rule, I know I might piss people off, but I can say that as I'm part of that club, is that when the Bible was metaphorical about something, or when the Bible was like, so say, for example, the Bible says, do not eat pork. It does say that. It's like, don't eat pork. Then Baptists are like, no, that's a metaphor. Times were different back then. Pork used to make people sick. It's changed. But when the Bible is very ambiguous about something like homosexuality, it's like, no, that's what it means. So when they're very direct, but it doesn't fit your narrative, it's a metaphor. But when it's very ambiguous and it can be twisted 900 different ways, it's concrete that he meant, don't be gay. That's gross. Like, don't have sex before you're married. That's gross. Like, that's what he means.
Yeah. And I mean, even sometimes it's really crystal clear and they're like, oh, no.
Right.
No. Like slavery, seriously, like it boggles my mind. The Bible is really crystal clear. You may have male and female slaves taken from the nations around you.
Yep.
Slavery was specifically allowed from the word direct mouth of God. So but now, no. The Bible, they don't like talking about those passages at all. It's like, no, the Bible. It's like, but the Bible was what the justification was to keep people enslaved, especially in this country.
Right.
The Bible was the justification. The Bible says it's okay. The Bible does say it's okay.
Yes.
So,
the Bible literally told Abraham that he was allowed to sleep with his slave girl in order to procreate and have children. Like at no point. So especially in the Father Abraham song, I don't know if you guys ever sang that. Father Abraham had many sons. It's a very eerie song. I'll send it to you. But at no point are they like, oh, by the way, Hagar didn't have a choice in any of this. Like, oh, Father Abraham had all these sons and they were the kings of nations. You know, they were the founders of Christianity and Islam. And you're like, yeah, but also can we talk about how like one of them's mom was a slave and she was just gifted to Abraham by his wife who couldn't bear children. And then when the wife had a kid, she got jealous and kicked the slave that didn't want anything to do with this out with the kid. Like, can we talk about that or no? Is that not allowed? Because again, crystal clear in the Bible, crystal clear.
Oh, crystal clear. There's specific passages that say like, oh, the men came back from war and there's not enough wives. So go out into the vineyards. I don't know why the vineyard specific. I guess there was around there, but go out into vineyards and take women from the nations around you and make them your wife. That's saying go take sex slaves.
Right.
Or take these women, drag them back by their hair, kicking and screaming, and rape them and make them your wife.
Yes.
No, it's evil. It's
right.
Pure evil.
Yes. Yeah. The Bible very specifically says that if a woman gets divorced and marries another man, she's still committing adultery. And the man who's married to her the second time is also committing adultery. And they both deserve to be stoned in the street by their village. They say the same thing about premarital sex. They're like, if you're a father and you find out your daughter's not a virgin before marriage, stone her in front of everyone in the streets. But that's metaphorical. That's a metaphor. But when he's like, I don't know, maybe in Sodom and Gomorrah, they shouldn't have raped people. Everybody's like, no, that means gays. That means gays. It's just
I actually paid to put up a billboard years ago with you may take your male and female slaves from the nations around you. And the ad was designed by a Black woman was one of the key pieces of the campaign. And we put it up with an image of a slave. And it was like, and the news was, they didn't want to talk about the Bible passage. Everybody wanted to talk about how offensive the image was. Oh, it's really offensive to have an image of a slave. This is really tone deaf to the Black community. It's like, wait, the image is just an image of a slave who was enslaved because of this passage. Right. That's why they were enslaved. So that was the moral justification. So don't be offended by the image, be offended by the passage.
So you've done some activism, you've donated a lot of money, you've started your own foundation. Did you want to start with your foundation? Did you want to start with Science Saves? Did you want to start with, like, where would you like to start in terms of, because you've done a lot.
You're the boss here, whatever you'd like to do.
Okay, so did Stiefel Foundation come first?
Yes.
That
was the change.
What was the moment where you were like, this is what I want to do, this is how I'm going to do it?
I was part of the 6th generation working for my family company. I worked there about 13 years. I was being trained to be the CEO someday, along with my brother, but he decided he wanted to go in the music and movie business. So my career trajectory was pretty much set. Like this is the way it's going to go. I'll be.
And was that the lab? Was that
the Laboratories was the name of the company. It was a dermatological business for like acne, eczema, psoriasis. So at kind of the heart of the Great Recession, we got approached by a company wanting to buy us, and we had a private equity company on board at the time, and they were really pressuring us. So we're like, well, we'll listen, we'll do the process that they want us to do, and we'll bring in other companies to take a look, but they're going to lowball us because everybody's so undervalued right now. We're looking at buying out companies because the stock market fell like 40%. So we want to go take people at a discount. They're probably just going to take us at a discount, but we'll do the process and see, and we assume we'll get nothing. And oh boy, we got offered crazy money and kind of an offer you can't refuse. And we sold, and I found myself suddenly unemployed. But wealthy. So
okay,
hey,
I was going to say, wait, but that sounds like it should have been good.
It was pretty good. I wish they told me my last day. I actually worked several days while I was unemployed.
That's really funny. They're like, oh, why are you still here? You're like, because I work here. And they're like, oh, no, you don't.
No, you don't. I mean, it was actually kind of like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't have much else to do anymore, but I'm cleaning out files and organizing things and doing whatever I can. It's like, dude, you were
And
last week.
yeah, how long ago was that? Was that like around the
2009.
to
And
say like 2008, 2009?
yeah, at the time, I asked a lot of people their advice on what I should do next. And people said you should do something you're passionate about. So I got engaged I created the Stiefel Freethought Foundation and started cold calling people that summer. And you can ask some of them, a bunch of them thought I was just some nut, which I kind of am, but they thought I was really a nut. They're like, who is this dude just cold calling, offering us money and saying he wants to start advising and volunteering and getting involved? But I did. And here we are. I've been doing this on and off for like 13 years. I did it full time for about 7 years and kind of started burning out a bit. So
easy to do. Yeah.
I shifted paths for a while. I started studying film. I read like 40 books.
Wow.
And so, yeah, like 2017 was kind of my like training in the movie business time. And then now I do both. I invest in movies and I do activism.
Now, for somebody who may not know exactly what free thought means, what would you say? What would be like an elevator pitch summary for free thought and what that means and why it's important to you?
It's forming. Oh, there's a technical definition on my website. We'll see how badly I butcher it. So it's essentially forming opinions based on reason, logic, and evidence rather than on bias, tradition, or authority.
Got it. And so is that kind of where the idea that Christianity should be separated more from things like schools and laws and things like that in society, especially in America, is that kind of where that took off for you? Oh, I guess my question is, what made you make that kind of the focal point of your foundation? Like, what was it that made you think that was where you really wanted to put your focus?
Honestly, September 11th, 2001. I said September 10th earlier. That would have been the day before. Anyway, Jesus would have been scary on September 12th. Anyway, but September 11th really kind of brought into clear focus the dangers of fundamentalist religion and really got me thinking about it. And also just witnessing what was happening around me, especially at the time. There was a lot of focus on anti-gay laws and measures. And it's like, these are all religious arguments. Like,
right.
All of it is just religious-based bigotry. And I felt like it was clear that fundamentalists were really trying to pass laws to control us. And I was afraid that they may, radicalize even more, or certainly try to use the government for power. And I wanted to stop religious fundamentalism, and I wanted to stop the discrimination against atheists, frankly, because I definitely experienced a little bit of it here and there, not too bad, but you looked at the numbers and it was like, why are there no non-religious people in Congress? None. At the time, we were like only 15% of the population, but we still should have been 15% of Congress. And we weren't and we still aren't represented appropriately, but it's all because of discrimination.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you find that so I was first introduced to atheism and agnosticism and things like that when I was in my mid-20s. So this was probably 2014, 2015. Do you find that being an atheist activist now versus back then is a lot different? Do you get more support? Do you get different support? Is the pushback even harder? What's the feeling kind of like there as an atheist?
I don't do as much pure atheist stuff anymore. I mean, I definitely do some. I definitely continue to donate. I'm more focused on science, church-state separation, democracy now, and specifically definitely have a focus against white Christian nationalism. But I would say things have changed in general dramatically in 13 years. Like, our numbers have skyrocketed. Like,
just in the years that I've been aware of it, it's just
it was like 15% then and had been trending up enormously, and now we're like 30%. And that's non-religious. So that's, roughly a third atheist, a third agnostic, and a third unaffiliated religious people, whether still religious. But still, we're like 20% of the population between atheists and agnostics. And that changes a lot. And we've been so open, we were directly, intentionally mimicking the tactics and strategies of the gay rights movement. If people know gay people, they're much less likely to discriminate against them. And the same thing applies to atheists. We're much more open than we were 13 years ago. And it's lowered the discrimination a lot. And you could see it in the polling, some of the polling data where they look at, my favorite is a Gallup poll that's been going since like the 40s, where they ask people a very simple question that really clearly reflects discrimination, which is, if a well-qualified candidate from your political party who is blank ran for president, would you vote for them? And then the blank is Catholic, Jewish, Black. Now, Black in the 50s was terrible, but now it's like 95%. It's like 92%. It's gone way up. And woman, way down, gone way up. And atheist has gone up, but much slower. And we're still down a ways, but we're still clearly badly discriminated against. Like 30% of the population would never vote for us, even if we were in their party and well qualified. But man, those numbers have grown in the last 13 years. We're improving.
Do you think it's because there are actually more, or do you think it's because a lot of people were always that way, but they were afraid to say anything until it became more popular or more allowed to kind of speak out about it? Do you think perhaps this, I was going to say, do you think perhaps people have always been skeptical?
I think it's both of those. And I also think it's a lot of hard work by a lot of people in the secular movement.
Yes. Yeah. What is the most pushback you've ever received from somebody who didn't like that you were kind of promoting atheism and anti-religious, or not anti-religious, but like non-religious ideology?
Probably my sister-in-law, who
I knew it was going to be a member of family. It always is.
I was having sinus surgery, and she sent me a book that arrived like the day before, and she called me, and it was like, I think it was called One Heartbeat Away. And she calls me and she's like, I heard you have like surgery tomorrow. I hope it really goes well. I just want you to know you may die on the table tomorrow, and you better take Jesus as your savior before then, because if you do, you're going straight to hell. And it's like, all right, fuck you, bye.
You're like, if I come back from this, I'm going to give you the what for. If I survive, we're going to talk.
I gave her the what for right then. I uncorked. You mean, cruel person. Like,
uncorked. I'm going to write that down. I'm going to use that for now.
I popped, and I ripped her a new one and then hung up.
How did I know it was going to be a family member? It always is.
But yeah, I get a lot. I'll tell you, like this week, this is a sign. It's still present. This week, I filed a protest against a candidate running for state senate. And as a Republican in this district, it doesn't frankly matter if he's a Republican or Democrat. You're required by the Constitution to live in the district for a full year prior to running, to stop them from just skipping and jumping into whatever district they want.
Right.
It's in the Constitution. Republicans are supposedly the law and order folks, but he doesn't live in the district. At least that's the way it appears by strong evidence. PIs have photos of him living out of district and his car there every night and washing his car there. He claims he's a multimillionaire businessman who runs like an enormous company. I think he's even might be Fortune 500, but it's a huge company. He claims he lives in a trailer in the woods on a property he's claiming he lived there since 2021 on a property he didn't own until 2022.
Is it Mike Huckabee? Because that sounds like something he would do.
No.
Living out in the trailer in the woods.
In any event, hey, he can provide your utility bills from December 2021 in that district. And all right, fine. Maybe you really do just kind of occasionally sleep at the other place, but the evidence is overwhelming against him. In any event, this is what goes down. Yes. So this is all public and big stew. I get a call yesterday from my attorney. The Raleigh News and Observer newspaper has a video clip from his prayer meeting that someone turned over to them. As a matter of fact, this article is going to be coming out maybe even during this interview.
Wow.
So he did a Zoom, does like a weekly Zoom prayer meeting. And in it, he gives an update on the campaign, which maybe there's a Johnson Amendment violation here, maybe not, but there's a pastor on there and all this stuff. And it's at one point he starts talking about my protest. And he's like, well, and this protest was filed by a wealthy Democrat. And he starts to say activist, and his wife interrupts him, atheist. And then he goes, atheist LGBTQ person. And I'm like, wait, what? I'm great. I'm married. I got kids. Like, my wife's like, wow, that's news to me.
Yeah, you're like, you're giving me more credit than I even earned. That's
so. Yeah, so like they want to comment, like, what do you say about this? But there's the example. It's like, there's the slander. He's boom, atheist. Like he's using that to discredit me as a ad hominem attack.
Yes.
To defame me with these people. And he's calling me gay also to try to defame me. And I don't take it as an insult. I don't care.
No, it says so much about him that he thought that would insult you.
He's clearly homophobic.
Yeah.
And it's like, wait a minute, I don't care, but what about everybody else? Because clearly he knows there's a whole lot of people who do think I am less trustworthy if I'm gay. So that's why he's saying it. And he also knows they really think I'm untrustworthy if I'm an atheist. So he's just going full out ad hominem to distract from what appears to be him lying.
Yeah. And I love when people expose themselves without even realizing it. Like by using that terminology as an insult to you, he just told the entire world on a recorded Zoom that he is a bigot against homosexuality. Like that wasn't even part of your thing. Like that wasn't even. Yeah,
it has nothing to do with anything. But he's a gay atheist, so don't trust him.
I love that they sell this story where like you went and you reported him and then you like slit the throat of a baby on like the throne of the devil and like worshiped Satan and you're calling upon and a lot of times I've noticed that gets used whenever a politician who kind of built the foundation of their campaign on Christianity. I've also noticed they do a really good job of making sure that anyone who calls them out for anything is actually calling out Christianity. It's not an attack on him. It's an attack on God's love and God's children. So everybody needs to beware. When you're like, no, man, you just didn't live in the right district. I don't care who you are. You just lied.
So yeah, I mean, it's still used as a slander. It was used as a slander in the media. There was an article in the John Locke Foundation's magazine, and it was like one paragraph about the claim, and then one paragraph about how he bought this land and renamed the road For God Lane or something like that in Latin. So it's like clearly linking him to being really religious. And then the next paragraph is billionaire atheist activist who started his foundation to remove religion from government. And it's like, wrong, exaggeration, not a billionaire. Wish I was a billionaire. Man, I could make a lot more money.
If you're in this like Batman lair with a butler.
We could really make some differences if I was a billionaire. But yeah, it's a smear, and it's still used as a smear, and it's going to keep being used as a smear for a very long time, which is why this work is still important.
Were you at least a little bit flattered by the attention? Because I would have been like, oh my God, he noticed me.
I think I don't mind it. And I actually, when I first heard it, I just laughed. I thought it was
right.
I was like, what an asshole.
Like, I don't know, maybe that makes me like a bad person, but I would have just laughed my ass off. I would have just laughed.
I laughed so hard, but I mean, yeah, I don't know. It's like, yeah, I don't love that.
Right.
This newspaper article that's like a direct attack on me and trying to,
right.
Yeah, I don't like, how about this? It's misinformation. I don't like misinformation.
Right. Like
at me personally.
Yeah. Like there's never a time where I would prefer negative press.
Yeah.
But if I had it, I would like them to call me a billionaire.
Yeah.
I would. Like if I had to have negative press, I would like to be accused of being a billionaire. That's all I'm going to say.
But I don't know what the articles say. I have no idea. They said it's coming out midday today. So it's very my goodness. Soon. We'll see.
I'm going to keep an eye out for it because that's wild. Now you had mentioned that you wanted to touch on Science Saves.
Yeah.
So tell us about that and what that is and what it does.
So Science Saves is a campaign that started, I guess, a year and a half ago. I endowed it with the Center for Inquiry, and in part because, well, I love Robin Blumner, their lead. She's a good friend, and she's so freaking effective. She gets stuff done. So I hold that as getting stuff done is just about the highest compliment I can give someone in a work setting. So,
right.
So we have partnered together to start Science Saves, whose mission is to champion the life-saving value of science and scientific thinking. It's a campaign that promotes gratitude to science, promotes the truth that science finds for us. Science Saves promotes hope, the hope that science gives us, that, the next time one of us gets cancer, well, you know what? Be hopeful, because a lot of stuff that would have killed you 30 years ago, you'll live and be just fine after some pretty torturous therapy. But there's a silver lining now to cancer, and it's because of science.
Right. It is. It's because, like, whether you like it or not, why can we not all agree that it's because of science? Like, why does that become a political and religious fight?
So Science Saves is completely neutral on religion. It welcomes everybody. It doesn't take a stand unless there's an issue of like direct conflict between religion and science. So yeah, we've been rolling for about a year and a half. We're still ramping up, but we've done all sorts of stuff already. We founded a National Science Appreciation Day
awesome.
which the first one was last year. We have another one coming up this year on March 26th, which is the day that Jonas Salk announced the first successful trials of the polio vaccine.
Wow, I'm writing that down.
So we actually got, I think it was 13 states ended up issuing official proclamations from the state declaring it National Science Appreciation Day. And we're going to go for more this year. So anybody listening can go to sciencesaves.org, and there should be a petition there that you can sign on to we will make the request to the state on your behalf. So you don't have to do any of the work, just sign the petition and we'll request it from each state. And our goal is eventually to get to 50 states and eventually to even get it to be a national proclamation. So
that's awesome.
That's pretty cool. And we had our first year, we did a video contest for high school seniors for scholarship. So we gave out,
cool.
It was like $15,000 in scholarships to high school seniors. And the goal was just submit a video talking about how science saves, talking about how science has saved you or a loved one. And just so we got all these awesome, like lovely.
Dude, I would bawl like a baby if I had to watch those. I would just weep.
So judging those was so cool, frankly. I mean,
I would just cry.
They're great. And there were some very heartwarming stories. And so we're gonna do that as an annual thing. So we're gonna.
That's awesome.
So if you're out there and know a high school senior, tell them about it. Well, I think the deadline last year, I think, was early April, or maybe it might have actually been all the way down to the day we announced. So we announced them in late May, and we got a really nice thank you message from the first place winner, who basically said, like, this was the difference. I got into the school I wanted to go to, but I couldn't quite afford it. And this made the difference. And now it's like, how cool is that? So
that is so cool. That's
cool.
So cool. So I think you should have somebody release another article that's like, billionaire atheist pays for children's college.
Not a billionaire.
Release it today. Yeah, I can just picture people who know you reading the headline and being like, atheist. Oh no, it's him. Attacks with his billions. Oh no, that's not him. Sorry,
not him.
Sorry, false alarm. That's cool. I was going to ask you like what your proudest thing is that you've done as part of that organization, but it sounds like that.
That was pretty remarkable. And we've got a great team. We really do. And so it's neat. And we've got a bunch of other things in the works. I think we are working on some pro-vaccine billboards. So we may do a billboard campaign.
Please send some here, please. I live in Tennessee. Please send some here. I'm begging you.
So needed.
I will pay the shipping. I will do whatever you need. Please. I will go and deliver it myself in my SUV, please.
So yeah, there's a bunch of stuff in the works, and we've got a fair bit of money left in the budget for a couple of years to keep doing things. And so yeah, if you like it, you're welcome to also go to that page and donate to us and help scholarships, help get the word out. And yeah, Science Saves
That's
is
really cool.
been a very rewarding, uh, it's a happy activism, or
Yeah.
sometimes activism is frustrating. This is a feel good one.
Would it be all right if I donate whatever is monetized off this episode towards that cause? Would that be cool?
That'd be awesome.
Okay. Yeah. I'll put an
cool.
announcement at the front that any monetization I get off this episode, I'll donate straight to yours.
Thank you so much. That's really cool.
No problem. No problem. And I'll do that as long as this episode's up. So unless like you get canceled and I have to delete this episode or something like that. You're like, well,
I've tried that before. It hasn't worked yet.
Yeah, I don't. The great thing, especially about like being a comedian like me, is there's nothing that you can say about me that's dirt that I haven't already said myself, like on stage before.
Yes.
So good luck. Yeah, I love that.
I live my life extremely open. So
it's like
I don't want skeletons in the closet. I'll just spill my dirt and you can criticize me and whatever.
Yeah, like there's nothing you can say that I haven't already said. So good luck. Just find a different way to say it, maybe. Although every once in a while, I'll get a very new and very creative insult, and I'm actually impressed. I'm like, hey, that's pretty good. Can I use that? But and then you also mentioned shot in the arm.
Yeah. So I just was lucky enough to sign on to a documentary that I invested in. It's called Shot in the Arm, and it was directed by Scott Hamilton Kennedy, who's an Academy Award nominee.
That's so cool.
And it is a movie that it's so cool. He was making a movie about measles vaccinations and the drop off in those and how it was causing outbreaks in New York and Samoa and other places. And COVID happens.
Yeah.
Of creating it. So it becomes this movie about like measles, but then also about COVID and COVID vaccine resistance. Yeah. And it's just a really interesting look into the world of vaccination and anti-vaccination. And they interview Robert Kennedy Jr. and all sorts of anti-vaxxers and pro-vaxxers. And it's really quite fascinating to see what the anti-vax movement is doing behind the scenes. And it's just I love the movie when I saw it. I think it's great. And I'm really happy to be signed onto it.
Yeah. And then you're also an executive producer of Starship Troopers 2. I can't end this interview without talking about this.
Super Troopers 2.
Oh, Super Troopers 2. I wrote down Starship. I'm sorry. Super Troopers 2. Super Troopers.
I really did love Starship Troopers, the first one. That was a really fun movie.
Billionaire Starship Troopers executive producer.
So yeah, I was an EP on Super Troopers 2. That is true. And that was a really fun experience.
How does that happen? Do people just reach out to you and are like, "Hey, I'm making this movie," or did you love the franchise?
That happens all the time now.
I'm sure that happens.
Something getting pitched.
Yeah, the minute I said that, I was like, "Oh, I bet that happens constantly." Actually,
constant. Yeah, I have like a goal of turning down 95% of what comes my way, just to try to be super picky, and so I don't go bankrupt too quickly. Because as they say, the best way to make $1 million in the movie industry is to start with 10 million.
I've never heard that, but that's hilarious.
It's so true. But Super Troopers 2, I heard about it. One of the guys raising money for it knew my brother, and so my brother mentioned it. I had never watched any of the Broken Lizard movies. I hadn't watched Super Troopers 1. I hadn't seen any of it, but I'd heard of it and I knew it was kind of a cult classic. So I was like, all right, I'll check it out. I'll go watch the first movie, see if I like it, and then read the script. And the script is hilarious. And I went to set, and the people there were so nice. I made a bunch of friends and had an absolute blast and partied and laughed my butt off for a couple days. As a matter of fact, I partied a little too hard the first few days I was there. So I decided to go back. And so I went again for another week and actually just paid attention. And the director, Jay Chandrasekhar, was awesome. Like I told like everybody around, like, I want to learn. He's like, oh, you want to learn? It's like, because I like teaching. And so he just took me under his wing and like just taught me about directing for a week. It's an amazing experience.
That's
It was
so
really cool.
cool. It sounds like very immersive. Like you kind of got a vaccine.
Oh, it was behind
Vaccines.
this. It was vaccine.
I
Yeah.
was saying vaccine and
Yeah,
vaccine. Like you got to look is what I'm trying to say. You got to a tour.
I got a very inside look that was incredibly informative and helpful for me.
That's awesome. I just thought it was great when I was looking you up and like checking out your history and your background. It was like, oh, like you've donated money to places like Public Religion Research Institute, and you have this foundation, and you're all about like science and promotion, and you also were an executive producer on Super Troopers 2. To the point where I almost didn't believe that was actually you. I thought maybe somebody with the same name had just been credited to your IMDb. But
you didn't fully believe me. You asked me before this interview. You're like, "Is that actually you?" Like,
yeah. I was like, because that's dope as hell. But it just doesn't line up with everything else that I'm reading here. But that's awesome. That's really cool.
I love to laugh, and frankly,
Yeah.
making movies can be, activism is hard sometimes, and it can be draining, especially when you get discriminated against.
Right. And it's one of those, like, I mean, I'm sure you know this tenfold more than I do, but it's one of those, every time that you feel like you've done something from an activist perspective, you're reminded of how much more there is to do. And like every time you accomplish something, it's like you are proud, but then you realize like, I'm going to need to do this for so long, and it's only going to be a drop in the bucket of like what needs to be done. It's just wild, when you help in any kind of, when you donate food to a food bank, or you donate money to places that stop like human trafficking, you're like proud of yourself, but you're also just like, man, there's so much work to be done in these areas.
And I have a story I'll share. It kind of goes back to the most crap I've gotten for being an atheist. Yeah, this one pains me. And this is one of the main reasons I kind of took a step back and started doing the movie thing too, because it just hurt. And so I was part of the American Cancer Society Relay for Life years ago, and our local team raised the most money locally. We raised the most money at their Relay for Life. And so I had this idea, like, this worked so well. We met all these interesting people. We broke down so many barriers of people who were like, just thought it was super cool that we're atheists raising money for something else they cared about. And they were so surprised. And we were talking to all these religious people who just like, they weren't prepared for it, but it was like, you could see they were changing their minds on the spot. Like,
right.
They do these all over the country. We should form a national team. And so I tried to form a national team, and the American Cancer Society wouldn't take us and lied about it. Like lied to them because they changed their website to take down the program we were involved in.
What?
And said, oh, that program we shuttered that program. They shuttered it after we talked to them, and they didn't really shutter it. So they took down the website, but some folks actually online went and used Wayback Machine to prove that it was there like the day before they said they took it down, and then they took it down. And then I called some of the other companies who were involved, and they're like, what are you talking about? We're still a partner with them.
Yeah, they're taking our money for it.
Yeah, what are you talking about? They didn't shutter the program. Like, let me call them. They call them. Like, no, the program still exists. They're just lying. Wow. And that really hurt and broke my heart, especially because we were offering to raise a lot of money. So then we partnered instead with Leukemia Lymphoma Society for their the Night Walk. And we did create a national team, and we had like over 200 teams, I think it was at the end. Maybe it was more than 150, but we had a lot. We had teams all over the country, and we raised over $1 million for them over a couple of years. And when we first signed up, we signed a deal with them because to get the standing of being a national team and being on all the t-shirts and brochures and like, we had to pledge that we would hit certain goals. And if not, I personally had to make up the difference. Yeah. And I said, okay, but look, like, big thing, if we can do this, if we hit $1 million, let's make part of the deal that you'll do a press release. And they're like, sure, great. So we signed this deal. I pledged like to guarantee that we'd hit certain goals, and we worked our butts off. And the local people were awesome. The people at Ellis, North Carolina were the best. And it was great. We did awesome work for them for like 2 or 3 years, and we hit that goal, and it came time for the press release, and they refused to send it. They just broke wanted to break their contract.
Yeah. And it's like, what are you going to do? Take your money back that you donated for like cancer research and helping other people?
And
like
they wouldn't, their head of marketing and the national refused to do it because we were atheists.
would it be worth releasing your own press release about it? Or is it just one of those like, leave it, it's not worth the trouble?
Well, I fought and eventually got to the CEO who overruled the head of marketing. And so they did send the release, but I think they just posted it and didn't send it to anybody because no one picked it up. There was no news. You couldn't find it anywhere on the web. Like nobody knew about it, except like on the website. And honestly, that broke my heart. After so much work with so many people, both, with our national team and the all the local teams, it shattered me. I was so hurt. And after that, I stopped working with LLS, and I continued to donate for a few years just to the local group, but we shuttered the national team. And that could have been still rolling to this day. We probably would have raised $3 million by now, maybe more.
Right.
But they blew it. One bigot blew the whole thing. So
right. And the good news is that for you in particular, that behavior didn't dissuade you from activism. You're like, I was looking at your website, and man, we could spend like hours just talking about all the money you've donated, all the money you've pledged, all the research you've helped fund. It's wild. I'm even going to put a link in the description so people can check it out for themselves. But just imagine how many people that would have turned away from activism in general, just being treated like that, and the long-term negative effects that could have had if you were the type of person to turn around and be like, fine, I'm not doing this ever again.
It did for a little while.
Yeah, I have no doubt.
It definitely did for a little while. It was just like, I can't take this anymore. And what it turned out is I just couldn't take it for a while. So now it's nice. Like I've got many, many things going on. I've got so many different part-time jobs that it helps fuel me. So even when there's stuff, I still got some motor in me. Yeah.
And luckily the rage can help fuel you to do more good in the future. You're like an anti-villain. You're like, oh yeah, I'll show you. I'll donate money to all of these wonderful organizations that aren't you. Take that. I'm a billionaire. I can do this all I want.
Definitely felt really good. Even though that one marketing guy was a jerk, it did feel really good to rub it in the face of the American Cancer Society of like, ha ha ha. All this money could have been yours if you weren't jerks about it. So
I hope that at the end of Starship Troopers 3, there's just a little thing at the very end. Oh, Jesus, why do I keep saying Starship? I literally have Super Troopers written right here. It's a Super Troopers. And I keep saying, listen, now you have to be a part of Starship Troopers 3 because I've just said it so many times.
Or why don't we just combine them? There should be like Starship Super Troopers.
Super Starship Troopers.
There we go.
1 through 4.
Starship Troopers. It's police in outer space, and they have comedic adventures and drink.
You know what? Also, though, I think you should donate money to also Starship Troopers too, if there isn't already one, maybe 3.
I haven't actually seen the sequels, but from the way they're reviewed online, they may need a donation.
They might, and just have a still at the very end that's like, oh, by the way, fuck you guys, and like the foundation logo, just be like, take that, and then just list all the money you've donated to everybody that's not them, just like. But well, I know that you are a very busy guy, and I don't want to take too much of your time. I think we're going a little bit over just a bit, but if you could just kind of summarize a message for anybody listening to this that you would want them to kind of leave this episode with, or perhaps you have something coming up that you want us to be aware of, what would you say that you want people to have as just like a takeaway?
Vote.
Yes.
Go vote.
Yes.
Go vote. I don't care who you vote for. Go vote.
Mm-hmm.
I used to be a Republican. I'm not anymore for a variety of reasons.
Yep.
But one party doesn't want you to vote. One party wants as few people showing up to the polls as possible.
Oh God.
And go out and vote and get active in other ways. It doesn't have to be atheism. Just find whatever's valuable to you, where you feel like you can make a difference in the world. Ultimately, history forgets just about everything, but we can nudge history, and enough of us together can nudge history in a direction that really helps people in the future and helps make this a fairer, more just, and more loving planet.
Yes, absolutely. I could not agree more with the voting. If we had more time, I would tell you about my very frustrating voting experience yesterday that was very intentionally frustrating on their end. Mm-hmm. But yeah, absolutely. Your voice matters. I think that's like the biggest message. So many people I've heard say that they thought that their voice didn't matter, and that's why they've never voted before, but it matters, and it matters more now than ever. And even if you're not necessarily worried about yourself, think about the people in your life and your loved ones and how it impacts them and your friends, and just vote. Just vote to make it a better place.
It matters, especially when we all bind together and vote.
Yes.
Huge
Yes.
groups of us vote.
Yes.
So yeah, everybody needs to go vote, and let's turn this country around. It's a scary time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Todd, thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate you being on the podcast and telling us just kind of about your work and about your life and your opinions. I'm going to link the Stiefel Freethought Foundation in the comments, in the notes. I'll link just like everything we've talked about today. I won't link Starship Troopers, but I will link everything else. But if you don't mind, I can link Science Saves. I can link anything I find on Shot in the Arm. I can link all of these things, and I'm gonna do my damnedest to find whatever press they did on the fact that you donated that money, and I'm gonna link it, and I'm gonna highlight it, and I'm gonna bold it. But I just wanted to say thank you so much for your time. I know that you're a really busy guy. I know that you've done a lot of really great work and activism and donating to very important foundations. And I wish, if I had more time, we could go deeper into those, but I will link as many as I can find below. And thank you for your encouragement. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for pledging to donate to Science Saves. That's awesome. I was not expecting that. Nice curveball.
Yeah, I'll put that up top. Any money that I make off this episode, and heck, I'll pledge like the next 10 episodes I have coming up. Any money that I make monetize off those episodes is going to go straight to the foundation to help people and to do my part to kind of help make this world a fairer, better place as much as we can.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
thank you, Sydney. I really appreciate
no problem. Have a great rest of your Friday.
You too.
Bye.